Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of Lime Time with Kofi. I'm your host, Kofi Anand, and today we're going to be having the discussion about educating Black youth. My guest today is Dr. Harry Jackson. He's a community liaison for the Fairfax GOP. He does a lot of advocacy work regarding education in the county, and we want to hear from his perspective as well. The education issue has been very polarizing, as we all know. And it's really galvanized a lot of activism, a lot of community work, and a lot of parents have been really in uproar with school board meetings and things like that. And so we're going to talk to him about what's been going on and what are some of the issues that he is tackling, particularly as it relates to educating African American students and his perspective and the perspective of the GOP. Because, hey, look, there's always some perspective that we could gain from listening to the other side. So we want to hear what that other perspective is today. And so we're going to sit down. We're here at the Eldon Street Tea Shop here in my hometown in Herndon. And so, yeah, we're going to sit down and we're going to have a nice conversation, have a nice cup of tea. This is one of my favorite spots to hang out at when I just want to have a nice, quiet conversation. So stay tuned, guys.
Finally, nice to meet you in person, sir.
Yeah, same here. I know we've been communicating back and forth for a little while now, and just appreciate, just observing you from a distance and all of the work that you're doing and around education here in Fairfax and statewide now. It seems like you're getting a little more active, things like that. So
I didn't plan on that.
Yeah.
I'm an accidental activist, like a lot of parents that have come out ever since September 2020.
Yeah. Well, I think your voice is important, especially now when it comes to education. The differences in achievement gaps, graduation rates, suspension rates, almost any issue with regard to how our students are performing or impacted in schools, there are huge differences
in racial disparities.
Racial disparities.
And I would agree with you.
Right. What do you think are the root causes of those achievement gaps?
Oh, wow. That's a simple question, long-winded answer for that. I think the achievement gap, in my estimation, let's talk about specific to Fairfax. Mm-hmm. That's where we're talking about the achievement gap, really in the southeastern part of the county, right, where there's a big disparity, and a lot of that deals with economics, because we have a huge tech center up in the Northwest where we're bringing in, attracting a lot of professionals with advanced degrees, and they're able to have the additional resources to supplement education for their children. So you're going to start seeing that gap show up there. I do think that when you start looking at school choice initiatives or the lack of opportunity, that lack of funding opportunities within other areas, that's creating a gap. If you, for example, like big gap in our county, you look at Mount Vernon and you look at West Springfield. Mm-hmm. Those are worlds apart, but they're right across. They're very near one another. Mm-hmm. That should not happen in a county with a $4.4 billion budget. Right. That should not happen. You should be measuring teachers' proficiency scores as well as their growth scores for the children. What level of proficiency are these children at, and what is their growth over time, aggregate average, and identify which teachers are not performing. And we need to look at what other options, and to resolve that issue, I would be looking at options such as, okay, do you put in private charters? Do you start having renegotiations with the teachers unions of which teachers are not performing? And there should not be such a disparity between these different high school districts, and you should allow for inter-district choice where a parent can send their child to another school for a different program, because not every high school offers the same curriculum. You have international, you have IB, and you have AP. So they should make that much more easy, and they should have that advertised, because it's not very well advertised in the current FCPS portal.
Is there a way for schools to maybe to make sure that every school is funded equally, despite the income inequalities?
Well, you're going to have different outcomes. I've had a little bit of a unique perspective, because I used to be a president of the PTSA at Thomas Jefferson, and I know that you're going to have wildly disparate PTAs if the school has a PTA. I do think you necessarily don't have to think it's a government solution. They could look at public-private partnerships. With the case regards to Thomas Jefferson missions, for example, they talked about test prep. Well, I ran a center where I brought in over 30 providers that all have mechanisms for free and reduced fees and free services for low-income households. So the providers are there. There are other supplementing opportunities that are out there that are free, that are available to members that parents are just not aware of. They're not being informed about it from their local from the local middle school counselor. Yeah. I think that's probably something to look at, not just completely rely on government, but maybe look at private entities that can help. As far as the argument is taking away from public schools, we're not talking about like we're in a rural county, it's the only high school that's there. Right. If you say put in charter schools, there is no public access, you're eliminating choice for parents. That is not the argument. We're dealing with over a $3.3 billion annual budget, plus you have the COVID money that came in. It's over $4 billion, $187 million. And just like with government acquisition, when you deal with contractors, competition brings out quality. So I would argue that necessarily looking at bringing in a public charter option, which is favored in the African American community. Particularly look at DC. Most how they have long waiting lists. They want to get their kids out of Maryland as well. They want to get their kids out of underperforming schools and into where something's there, as well as provide a coupon. I mean, for a free education if they're not willing to go there and send their kid to a private school.
So, as far as access to curriculum, why do you think it is so difficult? Because it's one thing, we talk about the funding issues, but why do you think that there's such a disparity in the access to in not making sure that every student has access to the same curriculum?
So let's talk about the advanced academic curriculum in the pipeline. That's a major issue, but it starts actually through K through second grade, which most parents, and it's just an awareness issue, that there's a little shadow cottage industry at private schools, from especially the second grade, where they will teach a child from one full grade level ahead of what FCPS is teaching. So if you're kids in kindergarten or private school, they're being taught FCPS first grade. So these kids are already being have a big leg up at an advantage where they go from second grade to third grade when there's an advanced academic program. Is that, yes, it is a correct statement that not every middle school has an advanced academic program. But if your child is in an advanced academic program and there's not one available at that school, that they will bus them to a school that does have that center. So every child does have access. Now, House Bill 127 requires that all of the schools must be able to get their standards up to where they're offering advanced academic programs at their base level school. So that's something else.
So it's not as disruptive.
Not as disruptive. Right. And we all understand, like, if the school's not conveniently, if there's not accessibility, again, this deals with the southern part of the county. You have only one advanced academic center that's in that area. It's in Alexandria. It's traffic congested. You should have those centers offered at other schools. Certainly as something supporting. Well, we got to address the elephant in the room. Figuratively speaking, that there's discipline inequities, right? SROs at disproportionately higher rates are arresting Black and Hispanic students in Fairfax County at higher rates. Right. It's an issue. It's a prison to school pipeline. Now, is the problem the SRO? I had an opportunity to delve into that data, and I saw where are the majority of incidents that are being generated? And the SROs, they're generating kind of a small number. The vast majority, about 70%, are being generated by school staff. So is the problem, and I think we need more data, is the problem is the SRO, or is it the SRO constantly being called in? Because out of that 70%, 40% of those incidents are not resulting in an arrest. So is there an over-focus or over-reporting on school administrative staff? And do they have other options other than calling in an SRO?
I think they're really, when I think a lot of people think of an SRO is that they're there to prevent like major stuff from happening, right? So like shootings, you know, taking weapons out of schools, drugs, you know, assault, you know, serious assaults like, you know, rapes or you know, really violent things. However, about 90% of the things they actually get called to address are not that. Right, like the overwhelming majority of the things that they're involved in are really things that could be handled by the administrative staff and never involve SRO. So my theory would be, hey, look, either take the SROs out of the school altogether and then only call them up when something really bad happens, or they're only, you know, stationed outside of the school, and if you really need a quick response for something, they're there, right? But I agree with you that the staff, the administrative staff, also needs to be retrained, because a lot of times they're the ones calling in the SRO. We had one principal said that they called in the SRO to like escort students from like the class.
It's a clear abuse.
To the you know, office or something like that. So this is how this overuse of the SRO, and there's just no delineation between what is an administrative issue versus what is a criminal issue, and only bringing in SRO for criminal issues. That's when these lines are blurred.
Could it be a cultural thing where there's not enough diversity in our teacher workforce to understand what problems they should be able to handle? Because we do not have a diverse teacher workforce, and that is an issue.
Right.
That's creating to a lot of issues. That creates to identification of the lack of early identification of gifted and talented learners. When we talk about, we shouldn't be having this debate with TJ. It deals with, you know, calling in the SRO for trivial matters that they should be able to handle and manage their classroom.
So let's talk about TJ a little bit, because the Thomas Jefferson High School, it has been in the spotlight for about a year now, or
yes, it feels like it's forever.
It feels like forever.
Feels like forever.
And so it's been a lot of back and forth where there was an effort to take away the testing requirements in order to get in, because the argument was that this testing is just causing disparities where certain people are just preparing their kids' their entire lives to take this test in order to get in. All right.
So let's just start from the premise. The premise is that you have all these parents that are just prepping their kids from birth for TJ.
Sure.
So, okay, let's really attack this one. So, Thomas Jefferson High School for Science and Technology, for the last 2 years, #1 high school in the nation for science and technology. An absolute embarrassment when it came to underrepresented minority is within the single digits, okay?
Right.
Clearly showing there are issues in the pipeline.
Right.
We talked about course quality, which I mentioned before. Is the course rigor at some of these schools, is it adequate? Is it a grade inflation issue? I would argue that there is a problem, and which is why children aren't being adequately prepared. There are gaps, particularly Algebra 1 instruction. There are gaps even in the private school. And if anyone wants to challenge me on that, I would say go to Art of Problem Solving. If your kid took Algebra 1, have them take a test, and you're going to find gaps. Don't be shocked. But you're going to be mad when you saw like your kid got straight A's and they're not up to standards. All right, so let's talk about the teachers and prep. As a country, we're 38, 39 in math scores. We bring in Thomas Jefferson, bring in business, which it did. Population has exploded, doubled since from 85 to now. You bring in a lot of STEM professionals from overseas, from India, China, and they're all STEM professionals. They all had rigorous math curriculums. You look at all of the Kumon centers when you drive around here, they realize that the math that's being provided by Fairfax County isn't adequate. So they supplement their child's education. Now, are they counting that as test prep? No, it is not. That is not test prep, that is supplementing the kids' education. That's when they're putting their kids in the center such as Kumon. I don't know if you're familiar with it. Yeah, Kumon Center. Right. That makes a big difference. It's 30 minutes a day when the kids go on. It's less than the cost of Nikes. They have Art of Problem Solving, which is not very expensive when they get into the higher level maths. So by the time that these kids take the test for TJ, it's merely just an exercise for them. But the other kids, for the quality of instruction, because parents are not aware that it's not being, remember, this is just Algebra 1. The old system was a 3.0 in Algebra 1, and you have a test based off of that, and the kids aren't passing an international standard. What is that telling you? It's telling you that the quality of education, if they're getting an A or a 4.0 and they can't pass an Algebra 1 test, but then you have kids who are in advanced geometry and beyond are doing well, that's telling you that your math instruction curriculum is an issue. That's telling you that you're not focusing at the 4th and 5th grade level dealing with fractions and dealing with decibels, which are the precursors which you need to be proficient in Algebra 1. That's where you need to start focusing the money. When you start bringing kids into looking into bringing in Algebra 1 by 5th and 6th grade, kids can do it. They can handle that work. Provide the after schools at the after school programs, like for an hour if they're going to like a math Olympiad. Provide, if you're having all these summer activities, stop adhering to the bigotry of low expectations or having only interest programs. Okay, has systemic racism existed? Yes. Okay, is there aspects with race? Yes. Now, is critical race thing taught in schools? No, but the pedagogy, the practice of CRT is present in our schools in some of the curriculums, particularly social emotional learning. We have seen that time and time again within the curriculum being developed. They're not teaching the theory specifically. That's a graduate level course taught in high school. But other things that have crept into this practice have been in there. There was a social emotional learning curriculum that was taught at my kids' school at TJ, where they were really focused on, intersectionality, racial intersectionality. Okay. But it was completely focused on, African American Reconstruction, post-Reconstruction, and the entire lecture the entire session was based off of the disproportionate of arrests of African Americans in the South that would be forced into prison labor gangs, to chain gangs, to help rebuild the South. Yeah. I mean, I'm just like, well,
was that inaccurate though?
It's accurate, but it's kind of, it's not inaccurate, but but that was a perspective, and it was like white oppression. I guess I'm not articulating it a great.
And this is what happened, right? Okay. And why there seems to be a push to kind of bury that part of our history, and just kind of whitewash it. It seems that's.
Oh no one's. I'm certainly not for whitewashing it over or glazing it over. No, you should be teaching history and the accurate history. I believe the Governor Youngkin has said he's for the accurate.
And I think we have a long way to go to even get to that. Right. And the fact that they're trying to even push back even further, like my kids barely learn anything except like Martin Luther King. We
agree. I think on the other side is that remember, there are poor whites in this community too. Nobody wants to be told you're privileged or you're only able to get this over me not because of the hard work I put into it, but because you're privileged based off the color of your skin. Mm-hmm. I think that's rubbing. I think that's creating a divisive concept with the county.
Mm-hmm. So you don't think white privilege exists?
Oh, come on. But I mean. But I wouldn't be putting it in somebody's face continually like that.
Oh, so you agree with it exists, you just don't necessarily think it should be taught or reinforced in schools?
I think you're crossing that point where we're not teaching kids how to read, write, and perform arithmetic and think critically. Okay. I think that to have the assumption that someone's going to automatically be privileged based off of their skin. At what grade level are we doing this, and are we creating issues within our K-12 pipeline? Mm-hmm. Remember, these are kids who are emotionally developing. Is anyone really having that discussion? Mm-hmm. And is that a healthy discussion?
Okay, I'm trying to parse out what you're saying. So you think that you think it exists. You think that at some point it might be appropriate for kids to learn this. Am I putting words in your mouth?
No, putting words about. But okay. I just don't think that these administrators are doing it, especially when you look in the totality of all their other actions. But the CRT, I mean, it's a framework. It's a pathological framework. It does kind of restrict reasoning of the mind because you're looking at everything through a racial lens. Mm-hmm. And I mean, come on, we can see race in anything if we wanted to, right? We could probably sit here all day. Mm-hmm. It's like, why is that door white? I mean, you could really have some fun with it. But I mean, but not.
You're pushing it a little bit.
You could be pushing it, but I mean, you don't want to have to. You don't want to have kids there is that whole concept of personal accountability if you start making a bunch of mistakes. But
do you think schools have a place in teaching values? And I think, and I think that's where we're getting at here. I think that there's a concern that now you're imparting values onto the students, and that this is where you want to draw the line. Teach math and science and English and reading and writing and things like that, don't try to tell my kid how to think about the country or how to think about themselves.
Okay, well, let's unpackage CRT a little bit more. Let's talk about values, because I do think that they have a hierarchy of values that they associate with. It's not only just being anti-racist, just being anti-white or destroying the white power structures, but also what are some elements of whiteness. And some of these elements of deemed whiteness are, and what many people think are virtues.
So if you're saying that they're just not doing it right, and they're botching this attempt or going too far or whatever it is, do you think that there's a right way to do this, and is there a way to find common ground to say, here we do need to talk about having these conversations?
I think from a theoretical framework, because the framework, things wouldn't be going wrong, because the good thing about frameworks is that if you're using it with accurate and transparent data, it tells you what's possible and how you get there. Mm-hmm. And is it getting us there? No, it's not. And the problem is that we look at the data inputs that they're using and what the outcomes are, and it's not there. So CRT as a theoretical framework, I probably would put that out the door and talk about other solutions addressing. We talk about systemic racism or other inequities that are existing, but that framework, it just doesn't seem to. And particularly when you think about some of the scholars behind it that think to remedy past discrimination, I'm quoting it from Kendi, to remedy past discrimination, you have to have present discrimination, and to remedy present discrimination, you have future discrimination. That I think is unhealthy. You're trying to force equal outcomes. And that I think is, I don't want to sound like too much to the right here, but that is kind of un-American. The people aren't able to achieve something based off their own abilities and merits.
This has been an awesome conversation. I really appreciate your insight. Before we go, if you want to tell the folks how to get in touch with you and how to tune into your show.
Oh, great. I have a show on USA Now.tv called Education Matters. It's being hosted by Sam Mataro. And you can reach me. I normally keep my information available. I can be reached through Fairfax GOP. I've had my information contacted there. I'm also at Unique Reflections Barbershop. I have my contact information there. And if you'd like to email me, I can be reached at harryrjackson@gmail.com. It's harryrjackson@gmail.com.
All right.
Thanks.
This has been a pleasure.
Yeah, likewise. It's been fun.
Yeah, this has been a lot of fun. There is no solution that I believe is Democrats have all the solution or Republicans have all the right answers. The right answers is probably going to come a little bit from both sides, and I really appreciate you taking the time to explain some of your perspective and some of the GOP perspective.